Two. Hey, welcome back to the Group Project Podcast. This is episode number 113, and it is a beautiful day outside. It is June 2nd, and I've got an awesome guest with me. Her name is Nancy Blow. She's the executive director of the Iowa Association of School Business Officials. Nancy, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's great.
So we were talking before the show. I'm not just lying right now, guys. Like here in Iowa, we get about 20 beautiful days a year, and this is one of them. And Nancy and I are both inside right now. We're I don't know, we should be outside, but hey, we're gonna make this happen. But I really appreciate you giving up your time. It's your time is valuable, and you've got some big things going on right now, right?
We do.
So tell us. I don't want to jump the gun. I'll let you tell your story, but you've got a big month coming up. So maybe tell us what's coming up for you. And I always start off with tell about your educational experience and leadership background. So kind of tell us what you've been up to.
Sure. So as director of Iowa Sbos, we call it IASBOs to shorten that, Iowa Association of School Business Officials. But it's just a constant process of providing professional development for school business officials in the state. So that's what we've done. I've been doing this for 14 years. I've been director. This is my 5th year. And like Jared said, I got some big things going on. I'm retiring at the end of June, and
That's
I am
awesome.
excited about that. It's really, really bittersweet though. I love the job. I love the people. I love what I do. It's just been quite a ride. These 14 years have just been an unimaginable ride through school business finance with my peeps.
So I asked you before the show. So Trent Grunmeyer, who runs Grunmeyer Leader Services, reached out to me and said, "Hey, you got to interview Nancy with IASBO." And at first I was like, "Okay, sounds good." I really haven't talked to anybody from your organization. But the more I started generating questions, the more excited I got about this conversation, because as a school leader, so much depends on school finance and how you are able to use the money to finance what you're doing in the district. So there's so many questions I feel like I want to ask you with your area of expertise, because prior to getting this job as the executive director and for the 14 years of working for IASBO, you were a school CFO or a school business official, correct?
Right. Yep.
Okay, so maybe tell us a little bit about that. What district were you in? How many years were you there for? And maybe even like, what made you want to get into school business? Tell us that story.
Okay, so that story is kind of funny because I had worked for a while, and then I had my daughter, and my husband and I decided I would be a stay-at-home mom for a while, and that was great, but she was going to start kindergarten. So I saw this job advertised in a local paper to work for the local paper. And the job was you go to school board meetings and you report on school board meetings and city council, things like that. And I thought, oh yeah, I can do that, give us a little bit of cash,
Yeah.
So the first school board meeting I went to, they were hiring a person in the high school office to enter the information in the first computerized student information system. So that really dates me. That was 1986.
Oh, okay. That's impressive. That's awesome.
I think I got the job because I knew how to turn the computer on, and nobody else in the district did at that time. They just really didn't use computers.
Wow.
So I worked in the high school office for a little while. I had an opportunity to go do some work in the superintendent's office, and I became very much interested in being the school business official. And the lady that worked there told me she was going to retire in a few years, and that if I worked at her side, I could probably just step right into that job. And it worked that way. And that's probably one of the things that I want to emphasize to superintendents who are listening. Having that transition time was awesome. It made my learning curve, when it was time for me to take over, the transition was like nothing, so I know sometimes they can't help it because an SBO will leave with 2 weeks notice, and then you're stuck without that transition. But if you have the opportunity to give, 2 or 3 or 6 months transition, it's really beneficial.
Yeah, and the transit. Yeah, you're right. The transit. So many people are going through transitions right now. It is just, and like I said before the show, it's kind of a little bumpy at times. It's always a little bit new, and with you leaving and you got a new somebody. Gosh, who's taking your position again? What was that person's name?
Okay, her name is Mary Beth Fast, and she's currently the
Okay.
CFO at Urbandale. So she's finishing out her school year there, and then she'll come to IASBO starting July 1st.
So earlier you talked about like the purpose of IASBO, kind of to educate, to give training, to do, but maybe, yeah, do you want to give us a little bit more information about what IASBO does? And then, in terms of listeners to the show, we've got a lot of listeners outside the state of Iowa. Do other states have something similar, or what can you tell us that you know about other states?
Okay, so almost every state has an ASBO. And some states, there's like a consortium, like in the southeast part of the United States, there's about a dozen states that are called Southeast ASBO, and they join together. And each one of those states doesn't have a director, but almost every other state has an ASBO. And we are affiliates of ASBO International. So ASBO International has all of those affiliates, and they have members from all over the United States, but they also have members from 17 countries. So the predominant country, of course, is the United States, but the second would be Canada. But we have members from Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, the UK,
Wow.
several countries in South America, and it may only be 2 or 3 members in each country, but we do have a lot of international members.
Okay. Okay. So, as you reflect on your 5 years as the executive director, what has been your biggest goals or maybe your biggest challenges?
So probably just from the director's viewpoint, the biggest challenge is to meet the needs of all of the members. So when I first took the job with IASBO, one of my goals was to give everybody a voice. And because in our group, there's Des Moines with 30,000 students, and there's teeny tiny schools with 150 students. And so all of those have a school business official, and they all do the same thing differently. So I want our professional development to meet the needs of the smallest school and the largest school. And I think that that's the biggest challenge, is to keep everybody as a continual learner, to provide something at all of our conferences. Like in the beginning, it seems like, well, so let's go back even another step. So IASBO is 60 years old. This is our 60th anniversary.
Wow.
1962 was when a few people got together, I think in someone's garage, like about 25 guys, and they all got together and they said, we need this group, we need to band together. And it's grown just so much since then. And IASBO is an organization where all of the members are the whole culture is networking, sharing, they collaborate, they'll share anything with you. They want new people to be successful. When my friends ask me what I do and I tell them, they're like, oh yeah, that's not real. People don't do that. But in IASBO, truly, and you find that in your setting as superintendent, that people do share. They share ideas and forms, best practices. So that collaboration, that culture is just foundational with IASBO. And we want, when new people come in, we want them to learn that quickly, because that's what's going to make them successful, is to get your group, get your peeps. Those are the ones that you're going to call. Those are the ones who are going to mentor you, so it has worked really well. So in 2012, just 10 years ago, the state of Iowa passed the law. It's now in Code of Iowa that school business officials, each school has to have a school business official that holds a license, and it's called an authorization, a school business official authorization. And so if you're brand new, it's called an initial authorization, and they have to go through a 2-year training program to earn their regular authorization. So as the baby boomers are retiring, there are a lot. When this program first started, there was probably 10 to 15 people in the program, in the initial authorization program every year. Now we do 40 to 50. So it's really ramped up a lot, where there are a lot of new people out there that need the training. And I think our training is solid. It's very foundational. And then beyond that initial authorization training, we provide professional development for all of our members. We hold conferences and webinars, virtual and in-person events to do the training. So that's what we do.
So there's so many questions I have about like the job market. You mentioned that there's a lot more people involved in the training, which kind of is kind of goes against the grain and I want to ask this question about like in educational, the teacher shortage, there's fewer and fewer principals, it's very hard to find paras. What is the job market like right now for SBOs, for school business officials?
It's slim, just like I think every industry.
Yeah.
So years ago, if there was a job opening in one of the larger schools, you would see a domino effect. You would see somebody who would apply for that job, and that would open up the job in their school, and somebody else would apply for that. And you had experienced SBOs who were moving into those larger schools and bigger positions, with better salaries, benefits, things like that. And then you would see those small schools would be the ones who were having to do the training all the time. They were the people that got stuck with the newbie all the time. And it was just a continual training process. But now, probably even a little bit before the pandemic, I think people don't think the grass looks greener anymore. And they're staying where they're at rather than moving to other jobs. They're thinking that, oh yeah, if I move, I'm just going to have a different set of problems.
Interesting.
So we aren't getting that movement or that domino effect of SBOs anymore. Schools are having to hire people who are coming in. Maybe there have been a CPA in an auditing firm, or they come from the banking world, or it's required. The law requires them to have at least at minimum an associate's degree in accounting or business. But so now the people who are coming in to be SBOs have greater requirements than what they did more than 10 years ago before the authorization.
So I do a bad job of, I kind of use the words like SBO, school business officials, director of business, business manager. I use those like interchangeably. Is that okay? Or is there a distinction? And you mentioned the CFO of Urbandale coming to take your position. Are those all kind of the same things, or are they different in your mind?
They are the same. I would say SBO is the umbrella that covers all of them. So they're all school business officials, but in different districts, like in some districts, they might be called the board secretary. In some districts, they'll be the business manager. Maybe they'll be the business manager, the board secretary, the board treasurer, and the custodian in their building.
Yes.
And that would only be by choice. That's not part of their title. But in other districts, we have a member from every public school district in Iowa, but the larger districts have 2 or 3 members. So there would be the CFO, and maybe then the director of payroll, and maybe an accounts payable person. All 3 of those people would be a member of IASBO, do professional development through us, possibly obtain the licensure, even though the district's only required to have 1. There's many districts that have 2 or 3 that have the licensure. Okay. So yes, SBO covers all of that: CFO, business manager, board secretary, all of those roles.
My next question is, the experience question. I've had the opportunity to be involved in a couple SBO hires. And when I'm in the interview room, the question of experience seems to come up quite a bit. What's your perspective? Does experience matter when hiring an SBO? Why or why not? What do you think?
I think it matters a lot in school business, because when they're in college, when you're getting an accounting degree, they don't teach public school finance. It's not something that's in your natural course of education. Yeah. So it has just a different twist to it. And I think that it's important to have experience. I've had superintendents ask me, okay, if I interview this guy that's coming from another state, what's that learning curve going to look like?
Yeah.
So there's even another learning curve. Like maybe they've been a school business official in another state, but they're going to come to Iowa. And Iowa's school finance formula is quite unique and has been quite successful for many, many years.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
it's an SBO would come in and they would have this general knowledge, but getting that specific Iowa knowledge is necessary. And in IASBO, that's what we try to provide for them. We have what we call it the Academy. It's the Iowa School Business Management Academy,
Yeah.
and it has different levels. And we try to have all of our people go through that academy. The professional development is there. In the initial authorization program, a mentor is required for the first year. So we also have beginning sessions that we call boot camp, orientation, new member budget training. We provide a monthly webinar we call the critical dates calendar. And literally they go through the things that are coming up, that deadlines and requirements and things like that. So IASBO can support them in a great way. So experience is great. If you can hire a person who doesn't have experience, who has the proper requirements to meet the licensure, they're going to get supported and trained by IASBO and their peers in a great way. So it's not essential to have the experience, but it really is preferred. I think if you polled superintendents, they would all say that they would rather hire, because they want to concentrate. They want to depend on their SBO for the financial piece of it. And it helps really to have somebody that comes in that has that knowledge already. But there aren't going to be enough experienced people to go around to fill all the positions that will be open in the next 2 or 3 years. So
Sure. Okay. So I'm going to go off script just a little bit. I've written a little bit about my perception. I'm going to my 5th year as being a superintendent. I'm moving to a large district. I've written a lot about, maybe 10 years ago, I thought, man, the superintendent has to be an expert in school finance. And now I'm thinking, as long as you can trust your SBO and be enough to be dangerous, you'll be okay. Do you see that role? Has it shifted at all in the last 15, 20 years in terms of the superintendents, how much their hands are in the finance? Have you seen that change? Do you think it's still the same? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that since the authorization, since 2012, when that became law to have the authorization, I think the whole bar has raised for SBOs. I think that back in the olden days, whatever that is, it's different for me than it is for you.
Yeah. Okay.
Back in the olden days, a board member would say, hey, my cousin Susie's just a really nice person. She answers the phone really well. She's polite. She loves kids. Let's make her the board secretary. And I think that those days are long, long gone. And it's like now the people that come in have greater education. We're providing more professional development for them, more instruction, more mentoring, more networking for them. So they're coming in with a vast knowledge of school finance. And we would prefer that not only superintendents depend on their SBOs for financial information, but board members and the legislators in their area. We're not a lobbying organization at all, but we would love if legislatures would contact us and say, hey, we're considering this bill in the Senate, what's that going to do in your school? Just to be able to tap into their knowledge, because SBOs just have vast knowledge, and they know a little bit about all the aspects of the school, not just instruction, but transportation and nutrition and the buildings and grounds. And, some SBOs are also the director of operations in their district. So they just have this broad knowledge of what goes on in the district. And then as a superintendent can share and include their SBO in their cabinet and in decision-making things, then the SBO can work harder to provide what the school needs and what, once they have a good grasp of what the goals are in the school, and, they can find those bits and pieces of money and funding to make it happen.
So you did a good job of kind of leading me into my next question. Are there any common complaints you hear from SBOs in terms of their relationships with school leaders?
Um, I I would think that the most common complaint is that school leaders want to break the law. And and it's not because they don't know
Yes.
the law. It's not because they want to break the law. It's because they don't know that, like, schools are governed by Dillon's law.
Yeah.
You can only do what's required,
Yeah.
what's spelled out in the law. And so SBOs are really good at knowing the law, and
Yeah.
they're typically very honest, very truthful. They're hard workers, they're gritty, they're tough, but they are not rule breakers.
Yep.
And
Yep.
and that's hard for them when somebody comes in, and maybe it's not breaking a rule, but it's making a change that bends the rule a little bit. And that's kind of that. I think that's the hardest for my. So this is how I describe my peeps. They want to they want to wear their green visor. They want to sit in their broom closet office with their red pen and do their work. And that bend in the rules is hard for them. It's hard for them to, well, like, it's hard for them to say, yes, let's try and find a way to do that. So I think that's probably the biggest thing, is that they don't want to break they don't want to be splashed all over the front page of the local
Sure.
newspaper as a rule breaker.
Sure. Sure. So and this show is, we've got a lot of aspiring leaders, a lot of assistant principals, dean of students who listen. School finance can be a little bit intimidating. When you talk to students who are going through their master's classes, through programs, what advice do you have for school leaders when it comes to understanding school finance?
I would say sit down with your SBO and tell them you need an elevator speech. Tell them you want 4 points or 6 or 10, whatever your capacity is, and sit down with them and, learn that some of the terminology, so that if you're sitting in the coffee shop and your district patrons are in there and they want to know, what's your total budget? Those are things that you should just kind of know those things. So those real high level things, they should know those just as their elevator speech. All of the bullet points underneath that, leave that up to your SBO.
Okay, I just love how you said, like, hey, you should know your overall school budget. What are some of those data points? I know I'm kind of going off script a little bit, but what are some key, like, if you're saying, hey, go, and I know each state's a little different, they might use different terminology, but what are a handful of data points that you feel like every school leader should know?
I think, so if you have a lot of construction, you should know what your bond issue, what the total cost is, what the process is looking like, the progress is looking like. I think that's really important. Just if you're talking about interactions with district patrons and keeping your community informed about what the school's doing, you always want them on your side. You want them pro school all the time.
Yeah.
And if you can constantly give that positive face, I think an important thing is solvency ratio. And sometimes, just general public doesn't understand solvency ratio, but it's a measure of financial health in the school. And if that number is negative, then your school's in trouble. You need to do whatever it's going to take to get that back on the plus side. And I think that those are, call it solvency ratio, or pick out a different terminology or a different measuring point, but have a consistent measuring point so you can show your community that you're getting better, or, oh, we've slipped a little bit. We need to, especially during budget time when you're asking for an increase in the property tax rate.
So you mentioned solvency ratio. I guess, one, could you maybe just quickly explain what that is for the listeners? Because I have a feeling some of them might be a little confused. And what are your thoughts on the unauthorized UAB ratio? That's kind of one that I've been taught as maybe to look at. Maybe just quickly touch on those two: solvency ratio a little bit more, and then maybe the unauthorized, is it UAB, unauthorized budget ratio? Is that what you unauthorized?
Right.
I'm forgetting. I always call it UAB ratio, and I don't even know what it stands for.
Yep. So, the solvency ratio is having enough money in your budget that you could last 3 to 6 months
Mm-hmm.
if things went south and your funding got cut, or things like that. So I think the solvency ratio is your ability to survive if there were drastic changes, and what funding would you need to survive for, whether it's a 3-month or 6-month period of time. So the UAB, it was simpler in my day. It was called your unspent authority. So
Yeah.
this is a piece of Iowa school finance that's a little bit different than other states. So the unspent authority is if you have budgeted money, but you were not able to collect it, you can still spend it.
Mm-hmm.
You could tax or borrow to spend it. So you have an unspent authority, and that you need the authority to be able to spend it. So you can have all the cash in the world in your bank, but if you don't have the authority to spend it, then you can't spend it. You would have to go to the SBRC, the School Budget Review Committee, and ask them for permission to spend that.
Sure.
But so your unspent authority, you want that to always be in the positive. You always want to have the ability to, if you would all of a sudden have just influx of students, or huge open enrollment, or you needed to hire additional staff for special ed students, or whatever emergency thing that comes through in Cedar Rapids. It was the derecho. You had it in Tama too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But all of a sudden you have those emergency needs that you need, and you need to be able to have the authority to spend to take care of those things. So that's a real simplified Nancy view of what that is.
I appreciate that. Hey, before I switch gears a little bit and ask a few like quick hitter questions, gosh, we've covered a lot of different topics. This is not easy stuff for us to like quite always wrap our head around, but is there anything else that you're like, hey, I want to make sure school leaders know about what Sbos does? Anything else in terms of school finance? Anything else that you feel like we need to cover?
Well, one of the things, like, as I travel around the state, or as I meet people, and just strike up a conversation, they'll tell me they're from a small town in Iowa, and I'll say, oh, do you know Billy Bob?
Of course.
No. and I'm like, well, they're the school business official in your school.
Yeah.
Never heard of them. So school business officials are kind of that mystery employee at schools. They kind of know the bus drivers. They see them, kids talk about them.
Yeah.
They know the coaches and the teachers. Most people know the superintendent, but the SBO is really just kind of this unknown quantity. And, I see them as just wonderful people who work hard in their districts, who are problem solvers, who support the school in a number, like I said, nutrition, transportation, operations. They support schools in a number of different ways, but they just really don't, like, you don't see National SBO week or day or even hour, but they just quietly do their jobs, their duties. They research, they learn. If they don't know something, they call their neighbor and they say, how did you handle this? I've not had this situation in my district before. They share, they collaborate, and they truly put kids first. They try to look at not just the dollars and cents of it, but how is it going to affect kids? And I think when I was at New London, I had a number of really good superintendents and a number of superintendents who it was most important to put themselves first. How is this going to make me look? What's this going to affect my career? But the superintendents that were the best, the first question, when you'd ask them for something, the first question out of their mouth is, how's this going to affect kids? And I think that SBOs think like that. I think it's just a natural thing that they think of first. Well, probably first they think, does it break the law?
Yes.
Is it true? Does it meet that true test? But
Yeah.
second, they're really thinking about kids, and they're
Yeah.
compassionate. They're very empathetic to, and I think the pandemic's been a good example of that.
Sure.
You saw school business officials delivering school lunches in the summer.
Yeah. So cool.
One day I was talking to a school business official and I said, "Hey, how's it going?" He goes, "Well, the superintendent and I just spent the week in the cafeteria because
Wow.
4 of the 5 cafeteria workers had COVID and they needed somebody to fix lunch."
Wow. Wow.
And they're that SBOs in there slinging
Absolutely.
hash.
Absolutely. Hey, if you're just joining us late, this is episode number 113. I'm talking with Nancy Blow, who is the executive director of the Iowa Association of School Business Officials. For how many more days did you say? The countdown is on for both of us and our different 21 more days. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. Like, do you have any big goal these last 21 days? That you're like, okay, this is the one last thing I got to get done before I leave this position.
So Monday, we're having boot camp for newbies and we're
Okay.
having leadership training for leaders at the same place, but in 2 different rooms.
Oh, wow.
So that's a huge thing for us. We do it every summer and I want to get through that successfully. And then after that, I want to devote all of my attention to preparing
Sure.
files and hard drives and just information for the new person coming in, so that she's been an SBO for more than 30 years. So
Wow.
she'll have that SBO knowledge, but I need to like make sure that everything's clear coming in. Well, that would be a dream. I think everything's clear, but everything's not muddy. I should say
Sure.
that.
Sure.
But that's my big goal. I just
Cool.
I want to finish strong.
That's awesome. Okay. So I kind of, as we get towards the end of the show, I kind of bounce around a little bit, ask some random questions. My first question always is, okay, so you live in Cedar Rapids. Is that accurate? Is that fair to
Yes.
say?
Yep.
Okay. So I always ask, if listeners visit Cedar Rapids, what's one place that they've got to check out? I usually try to get a restaurant answer, but what's one place they got to check out?
Well, so okay, so I like the outdoors. I prefer to be outdoors.
Awesome.
So Palisades Park and Pleasant Creek Park. I like to go to Wickiup. I take my dog for a walk out at Wickiup, and it's a county park with trails. But those are places that I frequent and love them. I love the outdoors. I also like to kayak, and the Cedar River is right there.
That's awesome.
So that's pretty. So restaurants. When we first moved here, we really like tenderloins, and somebody says, "Oh, go to the Blind Pig." They're right. Go eat a tenderloin at the Blind Pig.
The Blind Pig. Where's that located at?
It's on Center Point Road.
Center Point Road.
Which is just off of Interstate 380.
Yep.
Near 42nd Street.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. I'm looking at it right now. Okay, there you go, guys. You can go get a workout in. You can go do a little, what do you say? I always get confused. Do you say canoeing, or was I wrong on that? Kayaking. Do some kayaking, get your hunger up a little bit, and then go to the Blind Pig and try out their tenderloin. Now, is it one of those massive tenderloins, or is it okay? So she's showing me how it's a good, maybe a foot in diameter, it looks like.
Yeah, my husband and I always share one. So that comes in a giant bun, and I cut around the outside of the bun. I eat the outside part, and he eats the bun, the sandwich inside the bun. And it's enough for both of us.
Oh man. Okay. So it is about 5 o'clock, and I was already hungry as is, and now I'm there. So the Blind Pig. And then you said Palisades Park, correct?
Right.
Cool.
Correct.
Yep. Out over there. It looks like it's in Mount Vernon. Is that correct?
It's kind of just west of Cedar Rapids, but east of Mount Vernon.
Okay.
But cool.
Beautiful
oak trees, and it's right on the Cedar River, and there's trails, and there's camping there. It's just a great place. I've always seen wildlife there. It's cool. a fun place.
Okay. So what is one book that has greatly influenced your life?
Well, I would have to say it's probably the Bible. It's just
absolutely.
it's my reference point.
Absolutely. How often you're probably like the 10th person who's referenced the Bible on this show. Tell me, if somebody wants to attack read through the Bible, like what's the best way? How do you read through it? Do you go back and revisit it every so often? Do you go chapter by chapter? Do you bounce around? What do you do? Or book by book, or what do you do?
So I probably do a devotion every day, and there's always a verse that's the focus of that devotion. And so I kind of grow off of that. If that really strikes me, then I'll go and read the whole chapter. At church, the sermon series will carry us through different chapters, but
Sure.
I'm a typical SBO. I'm very black and white, concrete, sequential. The book of James it gives you specific, direct, do this, don't do that. And I'm just that kind of person. I just like things easy. I don't like drama.
Neither do I. That's like one of my core values, like no drama, because there's so much drama in the world right now. It just drives me nuts. And in school districts at times, I'm not going to lie.
Oh yeah.
Okay. If you could attend one musical concert, what would it be?
So recently, just last month, we went to Mercy Me here in Cedar Rapids.
Nice.
And Ren Collective they were the opener. I would like to go to a concert where they played the whole thing.
Oh, wow.
They are just with it. You're just clapping and singing, and
wow.
It's just really good.
Where did you see those guys at?
At the Powerhouse in Cedar Rapids. It was the Cell Center, and then now it's the Alliant Powerhouse.
Yeah, I drove by there the other day and I was like, what? When did this get changed? So the Powerhouse, right? Is that okay?
Right.
Cool. What are okay? So if you're stopping, do you have a favorite gas station or convenience store you go to over there?
Yeah, Casey's is just right there.
Okay. There's a Casey's. I was just going through, Waterloo, Cedar Falls earlier today. And like, there was literally 3 Casey's within like maybe half a mile. It's just nuts. What are your 3 go-to items when you go into a Casey's?
Well, number 1 would be fountain Diet Coke, not in a can or a bottle, fountain.
Okay.
I think Casey's really cranks up their CO machine so that you're just getting the really bubbly stuff. So
nice.
I love Casey's fountain Diet Coke. That's probably number 1. Gas is probably my number 2 there. And we live in a unique area. So I don't know if you're familiar with where Fleet Farm is in Cedar Rapids, Blair's Ferry, Edgewood. Okay, so there's Fleet Farm gas, Casey's gas, Hy-Vee gas, and Quick Star right there in like a 1-block area. And since Fleet Farm opened a couple years ago, they've had a price war on gas that's just ongoing. And we can get the cheapest gas in town right here. So I love it.
So will you go wherever is the cheapest then? I mean, you can kind of see the different signs and figure out where to go. Is that kind of how that works?
That's how that works.
So it's been such the topic of conversation here for a lot of people is the cost of gas. Between those 4 places that you mentioned, where's typically the cheapest price? Can you kind of put that in context?
So Fleet Farm is usually the leader. They'll drop their price later in the day. All the rest of them do, kind of one at a time. And you can just kind of see it. And maybe then Fleet Farm will go down another penny, and then the rest of them go down 2 pennies. It truly has been a gas war that's lasted almost 2 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but Fleet Farm's kind of the leader in dropping their price.
Interesting.
It is. So yesterday, and I didn't take advantage of this. And I'm an SBO at heart. I'm frugal. I'm a tightwad.
Yeah.
But earlier yesterday, Fleet Farm had it for $4.24. And literally today, it's Casey. Well, at the same time, Casey's had it for $4.49.
Oh, wow. That's a huge difference.
Oh, yeah. So today, when I should have gone to get gas at Fleet Farm when it was still $4.24, I delayed that, and now it is $4.49 also.
So I was
25 cents.
That is that's a huge difference for only being right there across the street. I was in Chicago this weekend and downtown, and I was like, okay, I was just curious what the cheapest gas was. It was $5.83. I know, I was like, what am I seeing that? That's great. I just never personally seen it that high. So,
Yeah.
hey, can you recall a job you applied for but did not get? Have you ever had one you didn't get, or has it been a long time ago?
You
Or have
know,
you never?
I've walked back all the way, and I don't think I've ever not gotten a job that I applied for.
Wow.
I've not
Wow.
had that many jobs.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah, true. True. You kind of been in the same couple different spots. That's pretty incredible. Have you ever, how about this? Let's try to change it then a little bit. Have you ever maybe worked with somebody who went for try to move their way up, and or consulted, or what do you somebody confided in you who didn't get a job, and what advice did you give them? Have you had that come up in your leadership?
yeah, I have, like, school business officials will call me now and talk about, well, I applied for this job and I thought I was right there and then didn't get it, so I just always try to tell them that you need to be very transparent about your past, about good things and bad things. Talk about your strengths and your weaknesses. Talk about how you overcome your weaknesses. How do you handle those?
Yeah.
Do you seek help, or do you just keep beating your head against the wall trying to take care of it yourself? And I think that it's just really important to have that transparent piece, so that the team that's interviewing you will understand that you're a real person and you have problems like anybody else, but this is how you handle them. Because I think that's just huge. You can be the smartest person in the world, or you can be the most accurate person in the world, but there's still going to be things that come along that, like, what trips your trigger, what makes you mad, what creates that short fuse, that little time bomb ticking.
I love just how you mentioned like the transparency. We all have our strengths and our weaknesses. We had interviews earlier today for a principal position, and the committees really gravitated towards the people who admitted their faults and said, hey, these are things I'm working on. So yeah, I completely agree with what you just had to say about, counseling those people who it's okay. We've all, we've got things we need to work on. So I thought that was great feedback.
Well, one of the things I like to say too is, so we hired an assistant a few years ago, and we actually hired her on a temp basis at the beginning, and I gave her a nasty job, because that's why we needed a temp person, because things were stacking up and I was getting way behind. And she did it. It took her a couple weeks. I told her no deadline, just I need this done. And she did it. We paid her by the hour. She emailed it to me and she said, I've completed this task to the best of my ability. And if there are any mistakes, I own them. And that was, I wanted to call my board and says, I'm going to hire her now.
That's cool.
I'm going to hire her on the spot. That meant the world to me. Is that, she told me she did it to the best of her ability. And if there are mistakes, I own them. They're mine. And I love that, because we all make mistakes. Nobody is perfect. And it's just like, own them. You make a mistake, own it. You slip up, own it.
You seem like a very productive person. Like I just, when you mentioned like going kayaking and like, I just seem like you're a hard worker. What's your biggest tip for being productive?
I think that you always have to have the end goal. Even when you're playing, if you're playing cards, there's an end goal. There's a you finish a hand, or you want to win that hand, or even when you're kayaking, you put in upstream and you're taken out downstream. Where you're taken out, that's where you left the car.
Sure.
So I think you should always excuse me, you should always keep that end goal in mind. You should always have a goal. I think being aimless is good on the weekend, but not during the work week.
Yeah. Well, hey, that was pretty much all my questions. Is there anything else professionally, personally that you want to talk about that you would like that we didn't talk about, you like the audience to know?
I I can't really think of anything. I always like to just support my peeps, and I call them my peeps.
I love
So
that. I love it.
they had a big party for me on our last conference for my retirement, and they bought t-shirts that said Nancy's Peeps.
I bet.
I like to promote them in a big way because they are that mystery employee at the school.
Yeah.
They work hard, they provide, they do what it takes. It's not just a 9-to-5 job for them. They work the hours that it takes. And I always like to promote them in a big way because they are super great people.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you another question then, because I love, you said that a couple of times about the mystery employee kind of being undercover. Like what can, and I know everybody likes appreciation in different ways. So is there a good answer you can, like, how can school leaders make sure they feel appreciated or feel acknowledged or feel like people know, within the district or within the community, know who that person is? What would you recommend? I want a tip or two, if you don't mind.
Yeah. I would think that as a superintendent in your position to always include your SBO, include them in what's going on, if things behind the scenes that you're considering, or, whether it's, gosh, I think in a couple of years, we're thinking about a bond issue, they need to know that so that, they're always informed. They like to be informed. So I would just say, include them, depend on them for information, especially if you're going to be speaking in public as a superintendent, make sure that you have your facts and figures correct, and your SBO can tell you that. They can share that kind of stuff with you. And
good stuff. I agree. I agree with what you're saying, and I feel hearing you say that confirms it for me that I need to really make sure I try to do as much as I can, but I know I can do more. And I know a lot of superintendents and even principals, other district level leaders can do more to include them because I agree, including them, asking their opinion makes them feel valued. So that's great feedback.
I know. I think that when you go to them after the fact, like, hey, we're going to put in a whole new reading curriculum, K through 5. And they'll be like, how much does it cost?
Sure.
But when you include them on the front end in those talks about when you want to do this, how much it costs, how you're going to go about through that process, that financial piece of it, I just think that you're right. It makes them feel valued and makes them feel like they've at least maybe headed off a crisis in the future, or created additional opportunity for staff and students and district patrons too,
So Nancy, 21-ish days left. What's your biggest thing you're going to do? First thing you're going to do? Is there a trip planned? Do you got anything exciting planned for retirement?
We have a camper, and I would like to camp with, in the middle of the week, because when you camp on the weekend, it's really crowded.
Yes.
But in the middle of the week, there's nobody there.
Oh gosh, that's great. Are any special road trip you're going on? Any part of the country or part of the state you're going to go?
So I've never been. I've been to the Northwest United States, but I've flown into Seattle and gone to a conference and flown home.
Okay.
So, or Portland. I've been to Portland for a conference also. So I want to go. This is what my husband says, that we'll rent a Mustang convertible and we'll drive the Pacific Coast Highway. We'll pick a starting point and an end point, and we'll do that. So I would like to do that. I've also never been to the Northeast. So I've never been to Maine or New Hampshire or Vermont, or I have been to Boston, but like I say, I'm not really a city person. I like the outdoors. I want to get out in the parks and in the rivers and the oceans, and I want to see nature.
You're going to have so much fun. Hey, I appreciate it. I'm going to let you go here. Nancy, congratulations on an awesome career. Thanks for all you've done for your peeps out in the field. And just keep, I added you as we're talking on Facebook. Hopefully you can accept my friendship there, and would love to keep in touch with you and just see how retirement goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for the opportunity and best wishes to you on your new journey. And IASBO will have you as a keynote speaker at our activity conference in August. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited for our people to hear you talk and share.
Yeah.
It'll be a great audience. There's usually 200 or 300 people there. So,
Gosh.
it'll be another opportunity for you to share for people. Years ago, all we taught was finance and legal and regulatory. And somebody told me, you need to teach that softer side of management.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I don't know how SBOs can use that, but that's been one of the most beneficial things we've done. And I think that you can provide that at the activity
Awesome.
conference.
Well, I really appreciate you guys giving me a chance to speak, and I am beyond excited. Having talked to Tara and to Dana over at SAI, it's just I feel super excited about the group that's going to be there, and I cannot wait for August in Ames. So thank you guys. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about my peeps today.
All right. All right, Nancy, have a good night and good luck with the next, these last few weeks here. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.